Hello again, welcome to the video. We're going to start from where we left off on ghosts and the paranormal. I've just came back from school. So, anyways, above, nope, I'm not supposed to say that. Climbing Mount Everest is the ultimate challenge, but for many, it is the last challenge they will ever take on. These mountaineers are climbing up the Khumbu icefall on the route up Everest. An interesting fact, Mount Everest is home to more than 200 bodies. The most famous, Green Boots, has laid near the summit for more than 20 years. Ever since Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary first reached the summit of Mount Everest in 1953, there have been strange stories of the ghostly and the supernatural from the men and women who have risked everything to achieve their goal. On the highest reaches of Mount Everest, death is a constant possibility. Hundreds of climbers have died here, and because of the challenging conditions, it is not usually possible to retrieve their bodies. There they lie, frozen in time. In 2009, a Tibetan Sherpa called Pemba Dorje was nearing the summit when a series of ghostly black shapes reached out to him, as if begging for food. As he moved past them, they vanished. A few years earlier, in 1996, a climber called John Kaikoura was descending Everest after reaching the summit. He was not surprised to see his fellow climber Andy Harris beside him, until he later learned that Harris had been killed along with 8 other climbers in a terrible storm near the summit. 2 British climbers told the tale of a famous ghost from the past that sustained them in their terrifying ordeal on the mountain. In 1975, Dougal Haston and Doug Scott became the first British men to reach the summit. Before their triumph, however, they spent an anxious night in a snowhole camp below it, and it was here that they both reported feeling some kind of benign presence with them. Next day, as they strived for the summit, this presence remained with them, encouraging them towards their success. Was this spirit of Andrew Irvine, the 22-year-old British climber who in 1924 made an attempt on the mountain with George Mallory? No one knows if Mallory or Irvine ever reached the summit, but if they did, it was their final act, as they disappeared without any trace. Mallory's broken body was finally discovered in 1999, but Irvine has never been found and remains where he fell to his death. Was he seeking to help his fellow Englishmen in their quest for the summit? To complete the task he was so tragically denied. Actually, I said in the last video we'll get on to this straight away. No, that's the next video. Sorry. Stonehenge, England. The massive monument of Stonehenge looms out of Salisbury Plain as the sun goes down. In earlier times, people could roam among the stones, but for some, this was an unworldly experience. If hauntings and the paranormal events are more likely to take place in locations with a long history, then Stonehenge must surely be one of the most haunted places on earth. The circle of massive stones set on the open plains of Wiltshire dates back between 4,000 and 5,000 years. Its whole existence is suffused with mystery. We do not know for certain why it was erected. Was it to be a burial ground or a place of worship? Was it the place of healing or of ritual to mark the passing of the seasons or to connect with spirits from another world? The culture that created this massive structure left no written records, and so the stones must speak for themselves. People who are lucky enough to visit Stonehenge after the crowds of tourists have report a definite sense of the unworldly here. Evidence of cremation burials has been found on the site, proving that many funerary rites were performed here many thousands of years ago. So the spirits of these ancient souls may well still linger. In summer of 2017, a group of researchers were investigating the appearance of crop circles on land nearby. As they filmed a huge field, a mysterious figure appeared, standing in the middle of the tall wheat. There it stood for about 20 minutes without moving, but when they turned the camera away from it, towards the edge of the field, the figure disappeared. In such a large field, a person could not have run away out of sight in time it took them to bring the camera back to the same spot. A much more scary story dates back from August 1971. When the stones of Stonehenge were still open to all, a group of people decided to pitch their tents for the night right among the stones. In the middle of the night, a thunderstorm blew in and lightning struck the stones. Farmer and a policeman in the area reported seeing an eerie blue light from around the stone circle, one so bright they had to look away. They heard wild screaming from the campers and ran to find out what was happening. When they arrived, they were shocked to the core. The campers had completely vanished, tents and all. No trace of them was ever found. Now that's weird. Now, I think I may have extra time to do another page, so maybe. Sorry. An interesting fact about Highgate Cemetery, London. Karl Marx was one of the most famous residents of the cemetery, but only a miserably 11 people were present at his burial. The dilapidated and... Yeah. Just checking if I said that right. Right. The dilapidated and overgrown state of Highgate Cemetery only adds to its creepy atmosphere, yet hundreds of visitors still come to see the grave of Karl Marx. Well, what do you expect in a cemetery? The lasting resting place of the dead might be expected to hold a few unquiet spirits, but at Highgate Cemetery in North London, there have been dozens sightings of a far more sinister apparition. In Victorian times, Highgate Cemetery was the smartest place to be buried if you were a Londoner of note. Thousands of the capital's most famous residents were interred here, such as the author George Eliot, poet Christina Rossetti, and philosopher Karl Marx. In the 20th century, it fell into despair, and the beautiful monuments became overgrown and dilapidated. That was when the sinister stories began. In the 1960s, the first accounts emerged of a tall, dark figure hanging around near the cemetery. This was no ordinary ghost. His feet never touched the ground, his eyes glowed red, and his ashen face was contorted into a terrifying visage, that of a vampire. This terrifying ghoul was no passive spectre either. He has wreaked havoc in Highgate for decades, threatening the local population, knocking people to the ground, freezing them in their tracks, and disappearing through solid walls. More recently, he has ventured beyond the cemetery to the Flask public house and a block of flats known as Hillcrest. Here too, there are reports of the temperature suddenly dropping, clocks stopping for no reason, and objects appearing to crash off shelves to the floor. Spirits of an old lady also haunts the land of Highgate Cemetery. She runs wildly through the cemetery, between the mossy, overgrown monuments and the gravestones, apparently searching for her children who, it is said, she brutally murdered. Another figure joins her sometimes, but this is a quiet presence, a shrouded figure who stands staring up into the sky. Approach her and she vanishes, but you will soon see her a little way off, gazing again at the heavens, as if searching for an answer to an age-old question. And now, I'll do this one because I think I've got time. Kaikoura Forest, Japan. A shot of Kaikoura forest in twilight, perfectly capturing the gloomy nature of the forest where so many go to end their lives. About 70 corpses are removed from the Kaikoura Forest each year, and many more are never found. Now, this is because in Japan, this is a practically, it's a suicide forest. It should practically just be named Suicide Forest, but that would be too scary. Finding our way through the forest's dense trees and undergrowth is a challenge even in daylight. This densely wooded forest at the base of beautiful Mount Fuji in Japan is a sad, sad place. It is where many Japanese people have been left to die, or more recently have chosen to take their own lives. No wonder then that Kaikoura Forest, which is also known as the Sea of Trees, is said to be populated with lost souls. In 1960, a novel by Japanese author Seicho Matsumoto was published. His story tells of a pair of young lovers who committed suicide in the forest, and it became a bestseller. Ever since then, dozens of people have taken this tragic course there every year. Although many are believed to have died in the forest previously, signs around the forest remind people that their life is a more precious gift and to consider their families. Sometimes, however, this is not enough. People visiting the forest to walk and enjoy the beautiful trees report that it feels overwhelmingly sad. It is also very easy to get lost, and to spend time there after dark is not a pleasant experience. Many of the troubled spirits of the recently deceased seem to be lingering here. Officials caution against deviating from the main paths. Deviating from the main paths, not least because some of the strange magnetic activity in this forest seems to make it almost possible to find your way out once you're lost. The ghostly story of Kaikoura Forest reaches further back even than the decades since the 1960s. In ancient times, this was a place where the Japanese would abandon people to die. In times of famine or other hopeless trouble, families would leave their children or elderly relatives here because there was no food for them, and these wretched individuals would suffer a horrible, slow death by starvation. The forest is said to be haunted by these poor souls. Perhaps in their misery they also had a part to play in attracting desperate living souls to the forest to join them in eternity. Now, I'm going to end the video here, but the next one we're at is the next one we'll be reading is the Screaming Tunnel in Niagara Falls in Canada. And I've already heard about this story before, even before I read this. Now, we'll be reading this the next time. I know I'm doing it a little bit earlier. It's just to get it over and done with, pardon me. And then anyways, I'm going to leave the video here, and bye for now.